talk about like boundaries in general and also desires, what I find so interesting, and I often explain it like this: when you are sitting with friends and you decided that you're gonna play a game that night, but nobody knows what game, and you just start playing, things get confusing and messy, and there is no flow, right? Because it's like, we're figuring it out. Yeah. And it's the same in the bathroom. When it's like clear we're gonna play football tonight, then the rules are there, you know where the goals are, what the intention is, and there is freedom to play. Yeah. And it's the exact same thing with sex or intimacy or any way of relating, really. When the edges are clear and the desires, there's like so much space to explore and to go deeper and to feel really safe and surrender, and it isn't boring. Like, I think that a lot of people also might think that it's boring to voice those things out up front. And I just want to share with you that it's not true.
So in one sentence, if you had to wrap it up in one sentence, like consent and boundaries,
it's fucking sexy.
It's fucking sexy. Yeah. Hello everybody. Welcome to the Mentor Man podcast, Celeste.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for showing up. I want to start with something, and this is how we met. Before I introduce you. Because I once got a message from you in which you told me your boundaries had been violated by a friend of mine.
And at that point, I had no idea who you were. So it took some courage to actually message you, and I felt that it was really needed. How was that for you to receive a message from a complete stranger?
Well, I get messages from complete strangers more often concerning their men. It's my job. So yeah, I guess so it wasn't totally new, but seeing how this came into life and the way you found your way to me, I was a bit doubtful what to do with it, because on the one hand I felt like this is not my fight, this is not to me, but on the other hand, like, I do feel as men to men, like amongst men, we have this responsibility also to keep each other in check, also to call each other out, but also to be better men, because I do feel I write and talk about boundaries a lot. So yeah, why not step up to this challenge, right? Okay, so I was asked to help out here, to sort of mediate this conflict that you had with this man.
Yes.
I tried, but in the end, like, I think you both agreed not to go forward with it. But while I met you for the first talk, I think, like, we talked for about an hour or 90 minutes.
I think so,
quite a while about this, and it sort of sparked something in me. Yeah, so I got really curious about the nitty-gritty little details about boundary infringement. Like, I call it now microtransgressions. Yeah. And after that, I wrote a piece about it. So I'm gonna write it. I'm gonna read it. Well, no. First, you introduce yourself. Then I'm gonna go into the piece.
Okay.
Shall we do that?
Okay. Yeah? Let's do that. So my name is Celeste December, and I'm an intimacy educator. I'm very passionate about freedom and all aspects of yourself and how to free that up. And I take people into processes in which they can discover themselves as a group or individually, and specifically around intimacy and sexuality. Yes.
Yeah, so I think the work we both do, it kind of touches each other there.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks
for showing up.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, let me just go to this little piece. So I'm just gonna read it, yeah? I'm not gonna read the entire thing, because in the end it's also going into what can you do, to get better with boundaries. And I want to talk about that later in the talk. Yeah?
We save that for later.
We
tease you a little longer.
Yeah, you gotta hang in there, people. Okay. So this is my daily nugget. And it hooks into this movie I saw, June, with Timothée Chalamet. Yeah? So it's called The Slow Blade Penetrates the Shield. Microtransgressions in Intimacy. Here we go. A woman I've never met reached out to me this week. She claimed a friend of mine had violated her boundaries and was looking for one of his brothers. She felt that there might be a role for the brotherhood of men, like between us as men, to also deal with this. When she shared her story with me, I started feeling how things might have escalated. Because I've been there myself. But when hearing it within the context of somebody else's story, it was easier to distinguish the subtleties of the conflict. Because that's how we judge. When someone else does what we also do ourselves, it's much clearer to see it and easier to understand. Also, metaphors work well to embody a feeling that we find hard to grasp. And somehow, in this specific case, it dawned upon me through Frank Herbert's modern literary classic Dune. There's a good chance you've seen it in the recent remake of Dune by Denis Villeneuve. It's like Denis, right? Denis? Okay. In this story, we meet Gurney Halleck. He's a minstrel, but also a warrior with fighting abilities that are second to none. He could be killing you while he was singing and never miss a note. And while training his pupil, Paul Atreides, in knife battling, they are both surrounded by protective force fields. Now, this field cannot be penetrated with brute force, but by very slowly moving the blade into the force field, it will actually penetrate it. The slow blade penetrates the shield. Now, this is how boundary issues often play out. When we bump into a boundary, sensible people will stop there. But our lust, desires, neediness, greediness, or even old school social conditioning that a woman's no means you need to try harder, can tempt us to make tiny little pokes at that boundary with the slow blade. Let's call these things micro-transgressions. Trying to subtly seep through a clearly set boundary to try and still get what lies on the other side. So that we can get that which we desire. So that we don't feel rejected. So that we still feel like a man. Still, boundaries are often not walls. They are rather elastic. It's okay to experiment with it and fuck up sometimes, as long as it's done consensually. But when someone sets a clear boundary or clearly says no, there should be clarity, and you shouldn't meddle with it. Now, in that case, using the slow knife is a transgression. It puts pressure on the other person again to set and repeat their boundary. But this time, it will be harder for them to spot what's actually going on. It becomes a little bit sneaky. Now, I'm guilty as charged.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I've done it. I think most guys have done it, and plenty of women as well. I even wrote this, so yeah. Because this transgression taps into our fear of rejection, our feelings of shame, and all the taboos that surround sex. All these topics challenge us. They make us come eye to eye with our shadows. And just a handful of us fully understand and own that part in themselves. So I want to leave it at that, yeah?
Mm-hmm. I find it so beautiful what you write about the micro-transgressions. And for me, what I often put it in this way, that there is such a culture going on in finding a no and then stopping rather than going for a yes. And what I mean by that is that if you're in interaction with another person and you just go on until you find that boundary or you find that no, that's a completely different dynamic and interaction and energy that you create between the two of you, rather than the consent culture. And we're going to dive into that, which is way more based on finding that yes and creating that flow together and being in connection to yourself and expressing your desires and your truths, and also helping the other person to express theirs. And that's such a different way of relating. And one that I'm absolutely passionate about.
I think it's very interesting because what I learned when I talked to you for the first time, it really dawned upon me. It was very clear to me very early that you're very conscious about these little things.
Oh yeah.
And you're super sensitive on reading these things in somebody, but also the way that you express this. I think you are one of those few women that I've met who's extremely well in articulating her boundaries or saying no.
Yes.
So I'm on the guy side here, you know. So I know sometimes the pressure that we feel to, you know, we've been conditioned in a way that we sometimes feel like we have to push a bit. Yeah. Like for instance, I have a niece. Yeah. She once literally told me this. She says no to a guy because she wants him to try harder.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So there are people out there who operate like that. Yeah. And when you're a man, for instance, these are like when we just look at the whole, I'm generalizing the gender, here, but like perfect. We are like getting mixed signals also, you know, on this.
Yes.
So sometimes there's this implicit communication that's expected, right? We want you to understand something without us saying it.
Yeah.
And I think this is where a lot goes wrong.
A lot of gray. Yeah. Yes.
So for instance, if you say no, but for instance, my niece says no, there's a very different message in there.
Different meaning. Yeah.
Yeah. And then also you throw in even more into the clusterfuck mix of like with the greediness, the neediness, and you think like, oh yeah, but I really want it, you know? And there we go. Yeah. Yeah. We're setting ourselves up for failure. And before you know it, like whole cancel culture has canceled like half of the population, which is male. So it's really like, so this, like with the conflict that I met you in. Yes. I didn't feel I was picking sides, and I couldn't pick sides because I just also saw, and that's the reason what made me write this piece is it's complicated, you know? And I think a lot of people who transgress boundaries, they don't really mean to. And sometimes we're kind of fucked up, and we have our desires, and we don't understand. Sometimes we read signals differently from what they actually are. Yes,
it's often about what you make a certain action mean, right? Yeah. Without checking in if that's actually what's meant.
Yeah. So what is it, for instance, like, I want to go into this because I want everybody to get better at this, you know, because I've transgressed boundaries of women ever since I started doing this work. Yeah. I also opened the door to feedback, not even consciously, but like when I wrote a certain topic or touched upon a certain topic, like I have people who read my stuff, who I've slept with, and who maybe get triggered on it, you know? And then I got feedback. And then I learned like, oh, fuck, I took it too far. But I never knew. Yeah. So this is something that I can tell women, like, I really want to invite them to open up and to be more honest. So what would you tell men?
What I tell men?
What would you tell men?
Well, it depends on like what kind of situation I'm in. For example, in my personal life, I go often to sex parties, and there I don't have like a lot of time usually in a very noisy environment to check in with somebody on like, hey, what is the play field that we're playing here, right? What are my boundaries? What are yours? And all those things. So there I really consciously dive into like, hey, do you have any fears? Anything that's very uncomfortable for you? How do we relate to each other also afterwards? Are there need for like care or me checking in with you or like all those things? So in the context of that type of interactions, I aim to always bring conversations up front. When I'm dating a man, I tell them straight up like, hey, this is where I'm at in my life. This is what I can potentially see in our way of connecting, or maybe I don't know at that moment. And then I tell them as well. And for example, in this particular case that you're referring to, I literally told that man up front because I'm proactive. Yeah. I literally told him up front. I called him and he asked me like, hey, can I just spend the night at your place after an event because I need to travel far? And I literally called him up. So for me, I'm proactive. I'm creating that safety for myself and manage those expectations. I'm not going to wait for him to express anything. I just take that action. So I called him and I told him like, hey, I actually feel a little bit discomfort around this situation. Do you have time to talk about this? And he was like, yeah, sure, let's dive into it. So I shared upfront, like, hey.
What was your discomfort?
My discomfort was around that. If I wouldn't express that I didn't want, like, I actively voiced out, I don't want to have like any sexual interaction with you. And I feel very uncomfortable when I wouldn't have shared that with you up front because of past experiences. So know that when you stay over the night, you sleep in the guest room.
Yeah.
And all those things.
You're welcome. No sex.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I literally voiced it out.
All right.
So when it comes to situations like this, I think it's teamwork, right? It's as a human, like it's for men and women both. It's like, and taking the action and expressing where you are at, and also checking in with the other person where they are at. So in this situation, that's what I did. Up front.
Yeah. But still somewhere like, so like what I'm really interested in about this talk, and then also this specific case is, it's like, it's not even like the big transgression, you know? Those happen. But these are rather weird, the subtleties.
The subtleties.
And we never really, I don't, it's not really being discussed. But I do think this is where it starts, and then it's like a sort of a domino effect, because if you don't speak out early, it's gonna get harder to speak
and
up
then
later,
refer back.
Right?
Yeah, I can explain actually the points where I felt that nuance, like, oh, wait a minute, is that helpful?
You mean this specific case?
I can also take another example.
Let's do it. Yeah. Okay. Now, I don't want it like too much to be about the specific case, but I think having a good example of it, I'm really interested in your experience.
Okay.
And that's why I think men can really learn from this, to hear the woman's perspective on how this.
Oh, I also have another.
Well, like,
another example of a very where it's about like the little nuances.
Yeah.
So I was on a night out and I was dancing with a beautiful man, and we had lots of fun. And I could feel that he actually wanted more than just dancing. So I took him to the side and I was like, hey, listen, I really enjoy dancing with you, and I would like to keep it just with dancing. And he was like, okay, fine. So we continued dancing. And then he tried to kiss me anyway. And it started like very slowly, very playful. And there I already felt like, oh God, I don't feel comfortable with this. So then I voiced it out. Yeah. And for that moment, I broke that connection. Like, hey, I'm just go and do my own thing. And even when I wouldn't have like said that up front, that's where the subtlety is. Like it can start like playful, but it's missing that moment of like, hey, do we actually want this both? And what if I say no? And then actually that moment when I told him like, hey, I'm just gonna walk the club by myself, I was very clear. And he was like, yeah, but I want to be with you. And I was like, hey, listen, I'm very clear here. Yeah. And then still trying to still, stay in contact in some way while I was very clear on that.
So was it also reactive, that you felt like, okay, now this happened, you didn't respect my boundary, so now I'm gonna sort of detach from you. I'm gonna walk the club by myself now. Because
I was actually very neutral in my body, if that's your question. Like I didn't feel like super reactive in my body or in my system, but I was very much like, hey, apparently we don't share the same way of relating and respecting each other, so I'm not really interested in spending more time with you. So yeah, for me that was like cause and reaction. Like, hey, I'm just gonna do my own thing because I don't feel safe with you anymore. It's not fun for me if for me the play field is dancing and you're gonna try to kiss me or even more than that. Well, for me it's only dancing that feels okay.
And how about like when men actually do respect it? How does that feel?
You can hear it, right? Like my reaction is like.
Yeah. It's almost like a paradox, right?
It's literally, it's like there where the tension of potential not being respected in my boundaries feels like very contracting in my body, and there where there is like the check-in and the safety. For me it's really about safety. There is the relaxation. I can even notice it now. Like I just want to lean back, and it's like and surrender is possible within that.
Yeah.
There's like the openness and the depth. There's like more possibilities. While in the other, I'm more aware. My body is more focused. It's like hyper focus versus relaxation and connection. And the other one is more disconnection and alertness. Yeah.
So you disconnect.
Yeah.
But for instance, like what I just said is it's kind of a paradox. For instance, if you say like, I just want to dance with you, you know? And then the man's like, I'm totally respect that, that's fine. And then you are like, oh. And what makes it a paradox is maybe this is actually what's opening you, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So it could actually also be interested to maybe dive into that, right? Like when there is that bodily, because it might, interesting. Yeah, I know what you mean. Like, if there is like that relaxation, and when I feel safe with a man, I also feel way more sensual, or woman, like in my case, it's both. I feel way more sensual and way more in my femininity as well, and my fluidness, and then it indeed might change, right? Where I might have expressed first, like, I don't want to kiss you, it might change. And then instead of doing that anyway, I would literally voice it out. Like, hey, listen, I know I said this before, and I actually would love to kiss you. I would love to connect deeper. I would love to, I don't know what I would like to do with you. And then it's really important to also voice that out, or have that check-in, or if it's somebody that you know way better, that you might also be able to navigate that with the physical response, like literally reading somebody's body. But that can be tricky, specifically if there is like a voiced out boundary before. So it's also responsibility. Like, hey, listen, I know I said this before and I feel different now.
Yeah. It's funny. I keep getting these insights myself while I hear you talking, but also from the perspective as a man. And, what occurs to me also, what I always tell guys is like, if a woman tells you no, or she's sharing her boundary with you,
yes,
thank her for it.
Yes.
And the funny thing is, ever since I started doing that myself, I also just feel more relaxed around it. But the thing is, this is exactly what a woman, I think, senses.
Yes.
And when I am very comfortable with no, she can feel yes. She feels the space to. You're actually creating space for her where you want her, where you actually want her.
Yes.
But you'll have to take ownership for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is another way of leading. I think when we think as a man, like, I have to lead her there, or like, I want to kiss her, so I'm just sort of like, I'm gonna lead her there, or just sort of take her there, or like maybe ravish her a little bit.
Making it happen.
Yeah, making it happen. Yeah. But it's the way you do it, right? It's the way you lead. It's not taking.
No, it's not taking the lead.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's not about taking. And maybe this is a nice hook to consent and the ways that you can create safe space, right? Because that's the next part of what I was writing.
Oh yeah.
There we go. So here we go. So what can you do to get better at respecting and setting those boundaries? Yeah. And then we get to the Wheel of Consent. The first one, learn about the Wheel of Consent by Betty Martin. And practice it. Like, this doesn't work if you don't practice it. That's my experience. No. Yeah. This will grow your awareness of how boundaries actually work, but you also train you to understand your own intentions better. Yeah, especially during intimate moments. maybe you should tell me. Like, just tell people a little bit about the wheel of consent, because I don't think most people know it, but it's a very powerful tool concerning consent, right?
Mm-hmm. It can be. To be honest, I haven't dove into like her exact method. I know that the trainings I had, it's been practiced, but slightly different variations. But what it comes down to is that you have games that you can play with it. And
okay, well, before we go into the games then I'll explain a little bit about the concept. So the wheel of consent, it's a big circle. It's a wheel, literally a wheel of consent. And that circle is split up into 4 quadrants. The whole idea is that the opposing quadrants, they balance each other out. And the first quadrant is giving. It opposes the third quadrant, which is receiving. If the transactions are giving and receiving, then it's consensual. It matches. The other one is taking versus allowing. So the second quadrant is taking, the fourth quadrant is allowing. This is a bit different. This is like, I want to do something to you for my own gratification. So for instance, like, hey, I want to like grab your breasts and like massage your breasts because it's just like, I like to do that.
It's
I like
for
to do
your
that.
pleasure.
It's for my pleasure,
yes.
yeah. And you're like, yeah, I'll allow it, it's fine. It's not something that you're actually receiving, it's something you allow, but maybe like in allowing it, you can also enjoy it a bit because you see how the other person is enjoying it. But it's really about that these two kinds of transactions are complementary. And a lot of the times it happens that somebody's moving from one quadrant to the other one without the other one noticing it. So for instance, I am giving a massage and the other one is receiving it and for instance is paying for it. But maybe as I'm giving the massage, I'm actually trying to get a bit to your ass, like, and massage your buttocks because I like to, And then I'm not doing it because I'm serving you. I'm actually doing it because I'm taking.
Yes.
Okay, so this is basically the wheel of consent. Yeah. Now there are games.
I love the game.
You do the games.
I love the games.
Okay, go.
Yeah, one of my favorites to do also in groups or in private setting or whatever. It's a really fun one that you can play with your partner. And that's exactly about this. Yeah. And it's super simple. You take 3 minutes and you literally express to your partner what you would like to give them. And then you can start a little negotiation about if they actually want to receive that. But it's about you giving it and voicing out what you would like to give. And then the other one fully receiving. So it's very much for them as well. And then you can also do a variation in which you voice out what you would like to receive. And then it's fully about the details and it's time for you to fully surrender. And then you can also have a conversation about like, hey, it's okay for me if you experience pleasure on this, or it's only for me to receive. And I don't know how that is for men, but for me as a woman, that completely changed my whole life when I just started to voice out sometimes that I just wanted to receive without the other person experience pleasure on it. Because before I felt sometimes so empty afterwards, or like something was off, or that I was still giving so much and I couldn't put my finger on it. And that completely changed the whole game, literally. So those are little exercises that you can do at home, can be very fun. And there are a ton of variations on it. Just put a timer and play with it.
What's your favorite? What's a favorite thing for you to receive or give?
Oh, I love that
If
question.
you want to share.
Oh, I'm open to share.
I just wanna, let's get some juicy stuff in.
Oh, recently I had one that was fun. It was with a man that I only met once before. And a little bit of a background story. So that week I had been facilitating 3 workshops in a row and I was completely surfed out. I was tired, I was exhausted, and I just wanted to receive. That was the mode that I was in. And in that moment I was in Berlin, didn't have like so many deep connections that could fit that yet. And I was like, you know what? I am just gonna write that man. And I literally wrote him like, hey, would you be open for a fun experiment? And he was like, tell me more. And then I just voiced out that I had a deep desire to just fully receive without him like experiencing pleasure, and that I was even willing to just pay for it because I really liked his energy.
It sounds like I don't want you to have pleasure.
No, it was more about me receiving.
Well, wasn't it more actually about you not having to pleasure him?
Yes.
Yeah.
Very much.
But that's very
so.
different, right? Come on.
It is different.
Yeah.
And for
Maybe
me,
he can be get a lot of pleasure out of serving.
Yeah. For me, there was a nuance in sexual energy.
Yeah.
Actually,
Yeah,
there
exactly.
was.
Yeah.
So I voiced that out.
No
as well.
quid pro quo.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And then he was like, you know what? Actually, that's exactly what I wanted to practice because I want to provide this as service. And it's so funny that you asked me. So then we did that for 3 hours. And I felt so good. So anyhow, what I asked for to receive was him to just massage my feet. And he did that for like 1.5 hours or something. And he was so present with it. And I was in tears and I could just cry. And it was so amazing. And he also spent like a good part. I asked him to just not even touch me, but just to put his hand like over my body and to be like very present with my energetic field, and that I could really feel his presence.
Yeah.
And also a moment that I just asked, like, hey, can you just sit behind me and just hold me? And I was just crying my eyes out, and he was just holding me through it. So if you ask me, like, what's your favorite thing to receive? I think it's different in the moment. Yeah, sometimes it's a foot massage. Sometimes I love to get my ass spanked, and sometimes, I don't know. Sometimes I ask people to dance for me because I really enjoy that too.
To dance for you?
Yes.
Oh.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I love that too.
Yeah.
I fucking love that. Oh, I really like that.
Yeah.
I had some girlfriends who did that for me, and like always I felt like a king.
Right?
Yeah, I'm just sitting there.
There is
like
something in that is so.
But also it's also very pure. You know, when you talk about a wheel of consent, it's very, one is really giving and the other is totally receiving.
Yes.
And
yes.
And I think there's a lot of pleasure there. It's sort of like it even maximizes it because it's so pure, and many of us find it so hard to receive without giving.
Yes.
Like I once, when I turned 40, I had a girlfriend, Jennifer, and she told me this one night. She's like, "You are not allowed to do anything to me. I don't want you to touch me. I don't want you this is your party." And I'm like, "Oh, really?" Yeah. And she just.
How was that for you? How did your body respond to that?
Like, I was like, oh, nice, you know. And like, we smoked some weed, but I was pretty high, and I was just standing, and she just grabbed my hand. She got me to the bedroom, and she just set me like right on this carpet. By the way, I was standing there, and she was crawling around on the floor and like looking at me and like kissing me, and I just put my hand on her head, like, and she just grabbed my hand and put it back. She's like, "No." And every time I just touch her, she's like, "No, you're not gonna touch me. You're only gonna receive." And and it was the first time in my life that I felt, Jesus Christ, it's hard. But it's so nice. But it's just it's very tempting to feel shit. What's the word? Selfish.
Yes.
Yeah. And it really came up for me. But in the end, like that really showed me something about me. You know. So oh shit, that's the pleaser in me. So in a way, it's even like a conscious practice to even
it is
to find this shit inside yourself that you're actually. Well, that's not really. These are usually behaviors that are not good for your relationship. So it sort of points it out. So that's what I really liked about it. But that was one of my favorite ones. It's like, and like my current girlfriend, she's super serving, and like she's very good at caretaking. She's Italian, you know, and I think it's also a cultural thing. But like I can really deeply appreciate that. So it's super nice. Yeah.
I love that what you're saying. Also about that you actually voiced out, right? That hey, you're just gonna receive. And hooking in on like how do you actually create more of that consent culture in your relationship, that's super important to actually voice those things out, that there is clarity rather than, oh, maybe I need to do something back, or maybe
but now we're talking about relationships, of course, and that's another pitfall, because when we talk about consent in relationships, I think when you've been with somebody for quite a while, we're gonna assume a lot, and now it's all probably okay, I can do whatever I want with you because we've done it before, but it doesn't actually matter that it's right. But we're sort of going on a tangent here, So I want to go back to the topic. It's like how we can get better with boundaries and like those microtransgressions. Yeah. So I have a second one here.
Okay.
And if something comes up for you, please just say yeah.
Okay.
Second one I had is if a woman clearly tells you no, don't ninja around her boundary to see if there's some low hanging fruit that you can pick or find a crack in the wall to sneak in. Yeah. So it's putting pressure on a woman, challenging her to keep upholding those boundaries. And that's annoying as fuck and drains energy.
So annoying.
Yeah.
So annoying. Yes. I actually have a very practical example of that. Last week.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Last week. No, the week before. Anyhow, I was in a temple space. And for the people that don't know, a temple space...
What's a temple space?
What is a temple space? It's an event where you can go to explore your sexuality in what needs to be or aim to be a safe space to experience. So you have a group, you have a time that you come in, you have exercises you do together, and often then there is open space to explore whatever you would like to explore within consent. So I was in a beautiful exploration, and one of the things, the rules that are in the space is that you're not gonna touch anybody without checking in first. And the moment that I was in, I was just laying on my back having one of the most intense orgasms I ever had in my life. I was probably surrounded by the whole group just looking at me. And then there was one man that started to touch me. And in that moment, I was I don't know how you guys' orgasms are, but I am traveling galaxies, and it's hard to speak in those moments, God,
I envy you right
Like,
now.
I'm literally out of words. Like, I'm way beyond my brain, anything. So I just kicked off his hand. And I felt like a little bit off and also uncomfortable because I wanted to stay in that experience, and I felt triggered at the same time. And I was able to tap into my energy again. And then he did it again. And then I was like, okay, now you're mine.
Oh. What does that mean? You're mine.
I'm going to confrontate you.
Yeah.
And I felt so angry. And in that moment, I know myself. And I took a moment apart. And the scene in a normal way. I walked out. And then I actually asked that man to come with me, like, hey, and to talk about it. Exactly what we just talked about, and I had a conversation with him about the no culture versus the yes. And then he actually offered to just witness my anger in that moment, and it got beautiful, resolved also in the group. I took it into the group and opened up the space for them also to express. I just shared what happened without actually talking about the man himself. And that my experience was that my boundaries got violated during the evening. And that touched the group so deeply. And I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna buy into the culture of just acting like everything is fine and teaching about consent myself and then not show up to how to actually resolve it, right? So what I did, I shared my own story and then opened up the space for other people to share as well. And the stories that came up were amazing. Like also men sharing about that they are always afraid to cross boundaries. And another woman that was like, whoa, I never saw this resolved in a group before. And for me, this is exactly where I came from, to learn about these things. And at the end, we all walked out cuddling. So it was beautiful how that switched around.
Well, this is beautiful because I think it really exemplifies how we are together, men and women.
It is teamwork.
Like whenever like you created a setting, or there was also like a violation, of course, but the violation it's set in motion a discussion about this.
Yes.
Where also like the men expressed like how they're struggling with it, and the women are struggling with expressing the boundaries. And I think this is something that we as a fucking species, we have so much work to do.
Yes.
Because like the fact that we don't, the fact is we don't talk enough about it, and we don't express it.
Yes.
And I'm maybe we should go to the next.
Bring it.
Now this is the fourth point, so I'm gonna skip one and we go back to that one later, number 3. But number 4 here was like share about your fears, your desires, your insecurities in the moment. Yeah. So this often takes the edge off and opens up a whole other space for you to navigate through together, disabling many transgressional landmines. They've become, this is a weird typo, okay. Anyway, they've become instantly visible, those landmines, when you start discussing them. And like, this is something that I've learned the hard way, and I really fucking pity that. But also I think I felt like it also tied into what I thought like I had to be as a man,
Yeah.
And if I express this, it's gonna turn her off, and then I come across as insecure and like. But now I just talk about it, and in a way it even feels empowering. And once I was with a woman who sort of shamed me for it,
Do you have
because I was very expressive about this, and but she was like Eastern European woman who really wanted like a masculine man who just kind of ravish me and just do what he wants with me. But like I'm okay with it, I like doing that, but I want to know if I have to be sure you're okay with it.
Yes.
But that's I need a very clear yes on that. And because I've done it in the past and it did not end well all the time, And these were women who had a very strong masculine energy. They were like, they wanted to sort of maintain their strong, independent energy, I think. And this is the pattern that I saw.
Yes.
But a lot of the times with the women who were very strong in touch with their feminine energy, those women were way better at expressing. Yeah.
Interesting.
But this is again, it's a tangent. Again, like sharing fears, desires, and insecurities. I think that's beautiful about your story, and that you saw what happened, even to the whole group.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for me, it also feels very empowering just to own it. Like hey, I'm not sure, or like or maybe I want to do something, but I'm not sure you're okay with it.
Yes.
And then you also have super nice games. You can play to discover that.
What's your favorite, Eric?
It's the yes and the no game.
Maybe.
Okay, then I will explain. The first this is a kind of a BDSM game, because I learned this at a tantra retreat, which is called Tantric Domination. 3 days. It was one of the most fun weekends in my life. But there we learned first the yes game. And the yes game is you have a dom and you have a sub. And the sub, he stands there, or he just stands there. And the dom just stands in front of the sub and walks around it and is going to say things that he or she wants to do to the other. And the sub who stands there can only say yes. But it's all about the way you say it. So if it's like, can I kiss you? And then the sub can say like, yes, if they really like it. But if it's, for instance, like, can I... Oh, I think we have an alarm going off, right? Shall I get it?
Yes.
No, let it go.
Sorry.
No,
Wat stom.
Yeah.
Ik zet hem er even uit.
But, and for instance, if... for instance, you say like, I like to spit in your face. The other one's like, yes. Yeah. So this is really about like finding, also being comfortable with saying things you may be ashamed of, but also the other one in embodying what you say. It's not about the verbal thing. It's really about like, how do you communicate something when you actually don't want it? Yeah. So this is the way you start to learn to read the embodiment of the other person. Then you have the no game. You play that after that. And the no game is you really have to get a no out of them. So for instance, like, I could like put my pinky in your ear, like start like and like no, you know, like okay, that's a very instant no. But for instance, like you can slap somebody in the ass, and it's like, and they're standing there saying nothing. And you just slap them harder, and like all of a sudden you're looking for like a 7, 8 out of 10, you know. And I was like, oh, there's the no, yeah. So then you find the boundaries. You go. It's really like a game to see where somebody's at. And also the fun thing about this is like it really sets the playing field. Because you're not having sex, you know, you're just saying yes or no. But then all of a sudden it's like, oh, you really like that too. Oh yeah, now we can have fun. So all of a sudden, like you're skipping months of like
figuring
hidden contracts and unspoken truths and oh no, I'm ashamed of something or this or that. No, you're tackling that within 10 minutes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
So this is the beauty of it, and I think this is the beauty of this game. It goes into the fears, desires, and insecurities.
Yeah.
And it takes them away. It's a good game, right?
It's an amazing game. I love it.
Yeah.
Also, specifically, when people are not so used to those type of games, and then the insights afterwards. I can remember that I played that game for the first time. I was bawling my eyes out afterwards, just by feeling and realizing that I have been ignoring my no for so many times and then saying a yes while my whole body was telling me, And that's where it clicked in that game years and years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Saying yes when you mean no.
Yeah.
And that's where it gets really complicated.
That's where it gets confused.
When you're trying to sort of lead, right? Yeah. I don't know whose quote it is, but it's like, if I can trust your yes, I can trust your no. Or the way around.
Other way around, yes.
Yeah. If I trust your no, I can trust your yes. A lot of the times, so like for instance, when we're pleasing, we say yes when it's actually a no. And it's also it's so hard, you know, like how I want to treat people as adults, but when I've seen embodied no and I hear a yes, then I feel like do I have to coach you now, you know, into getting the truth out? Because I feel I'm gonna violate your boundaries, and then I'm the fucking perpetrator later.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting thing.
Well, what can women do? Or like people, men can happen. This can happen to men as well, but
Humans,
it happens to women way more often, I think. And I think you're super good at it. So, how do you get better at that?
Better in well, it depends what your question is. Your question like when you notice that you'll
speaking your truth. That's what I'm trying to say.
How to speak your truth.
Yeah, like I said, it's like if you catch that pleaser. Like I've worked with somebody for the last year, a client, and we work on this almost nonstop, and she's gotten really good at it. But still, it's a struggle sometimes, you know.
Yeah.
But well, like I'm wondering, like maybe you know something here I don't know yet. So.
Oh, fun. Well, what I would say is start in an area an area in your life where it's easy to practice. Like in the end, it's all about creating new habits, and it's just repetition.
Exactly. Yeah.
So maybe you can start with like if somebody asks you to do the freaking dishes and you really don't feel like it, just to say no. Or when you said yes first and you feel that no, like then to express like, hey, you know, I actually really don't want to do this. Can we maybe talk about it, right? Maybe you want to do it today and then I do it tomorrow. How would we both feel about it? But it starts literally by feeling it in your body and starting to speak up about it. And also what can help big time is, for example, I had a period in my life where I was really struggling with if I was like more in the galaxy traveling space in sexuality to actually voice things out. So then now I literally ask men up front, if we go that deep, like, hey, what I need from you is to actively check in with me So just ask me like, hey, how is this for you? Do you want to, and then I even add on top of that, can you ask me yes or no questions that I can easily answer that?
Oh, yes or no questions.
Yeah, that I can just nod rather than having to use my voice.
Yeah.
So those are all ways to practice, right? And informing your environment, and also to start practicing with your yeses and nos in areas that feel easy and simple, and then just lower up that bar like slowly rather than pressuring yourself in all areas of your life to just start doing it now. Yeah.
That's interesting. I tell this to men as well.
Yeah.
I call it like being curious. About your partner, especially with women who a lot of the times do have issues with expressing boundaries. I think many of them, they know where they are, and even if you don't, you can also guide them into exploring them. Yes. And this is, I think, a lot of the times like men take the lead in sex, right? But it means you take the lead in it is in essence like holding space.
It is the space.
It's the space, and if you can do that properly, and instead of, it's nice to lead her in there, but like there's a lot of room for her to move into that space. But it has to be safe. It has to be, if you know you can express a yes or a no, whatever it is. Because I feel like boundaries and desires are actually sort of the same thing. It's really what do you want, and it's also what you don't want. Yes. But it's like, where does the spectrum begin and end? Yes. And it's even like, it's not one. It's definition. It's not one dimensional, but it's. Because I think a lot of women, they feel they can't express themselves, or they have to please, or like what we talked about online. It's like you have to be the good girl. You're stuck in that cage. Yes. Like if your man can be that cage breaker for you, or like open the door for you, it's like, I think there can be such an incredible feeling of liberation, of freedom. Freedom, so much freedom. Yeah, and if you can lead your partner there, you can. You're sort of a liberator, right? It's true. And then you get the woman you want. Then you get like wild, deep, wild feminine. Actually, because the safety is better. I want that woman, I do. I think a lot of guys are scared shitless of the woman, but I if it were up to me, all women were like that. So yeah. What would the world look like? Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's talk about it another time. I'm not sure what the world would look like, but.
And when we talk about like boundaries in general. Yeah. And also desires, what I find so interesting, and I often explain it like this. When you are sitting with friends and you decided that you're gonna play a game that night, but nobody knows what game, and you just start playing, things get confusing and messy, and there is no flow, right? Because it's like, we're figuring it out. Yeah. And it's the same in the bathroom. When it's like clear we're gonna play football tonight, then the rules are there, you know where the goals are, what the intention is, and there is freedom to play. Yeah. And it's the exact same thing with sex or intimacy or any way of relating, really. When the edges are clear and the desires, there's like so much space to explore and to go deeper and to feel really safe and surrender, and it isn't boring. Like I think that a lot of people also might think that it's boring to voice those things out up front. Yeah. And I just want to share with you that it's not true.
So in one sentence, if you had to wrap it up in one sentence, like consent and boundaries,
it's fucking sexy.
It's fucking sexy. Yeah. Like it's so funny because I do feel like once you're not afraid to talk about these things anymore. Yeah. You can totally grab by the balls and just talk about it. Then you can really unlock some juicy.
It is, and it's sexy, right? When the other person is expressing exactly what they want and don't want, it's like so much clarity, so much freedom.
Yeah. Now, okay. Number 3. Yes. Here we go. Practice being comfortable with her no. Thank her for having the guts to tell you no, and for sharing her boundary with you. Take it like a man, and you will feel it's even like a superpower. And ironically, this will make you more attractive. So I think it's like the anecdote you shared about if a man would have accepted your I don't want to kiss, that it might like paradoxically, it might switch you even around. Now this is tricky because I don't want to tell guys like, oh yeah, use this as a tool. In the end, like it might not happen, you know, but I can give you this. Like if you press on, you will fail nonetheless. Yes.
Still, yeah. And you build the deeper connection.
Yeah. So, yeah. And when you think about this point, being comfortable with a no, what I also really liked from teaching I once got is asking feedback afterwards. So this is where the ego gets very scared. It's like, for instance, if you have a date or you even like have a date and you want to practice something with somebody, yeah, you can do that. You can ask for that. But also afterwards, you can ask for feedback, where you can say like, how did you experience the date? Or was there something that you liked? Or is there something what did I do right? What did I do wrong? Or what can I improve on? And like having these discussions is a taboo, right? But it can really make you, there's nothing that makes you grow as a lover than that, I think.
Oh my God, yes. I actually test people on it, kind of. Yes, like both ways. I have another example of 2 weeks ago.
It's like all your examples are very recent, aren't they?
Yes, they are. They are. I had a pretty full week in Berlin. Yeah, I went on a date.
Yeah.
The first date with a man. And he wanted to kiss me all the time. And I didn't feel like I rather have cuddles, right? So I shared that with him in that moment even. And then still he tried to kiss me and we were almost at the end of the date, and then I voiced it out again. Subtle. And then afterwards, he asked me, when we already said goodbye, like, hey, you want to meet again? And I was like, well, there's actually something that I need to express before I say yes. Or before I give an answer. That's what I said. And then I voiced out, and I found it like, okay, this is gonna be a deciding moment for me, right? If I actually want to relate with you, how you're gonna respond to this. So I share like full bravery, like, hey, listen, for me, it's really important that there is more physical space, meaning that you really check in with me if I want to kiss you, just by coming first slowly close to me before you actually do it, or ask it when you're not sure. But otherwise, I get nervous and tension in my body versus that I can just feel relaxed around you. And maybe then I want to kiss you. But if you take up that space, then I can guarantee you we're not going to go on another date. Yeah. And he took it like a hero. He was just responding with, oh, thank you so much. And that's completely fine. And then on the second date, we had such a magical evening. And he even checked in with me afterwards, like, hey, how was that for you? And now we're going on another date, you know?
See, my theory works.
It is. It's so true. It's so true. Like when you start to like speak about those things.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I also asked like, hey, how was that for you, me expressing that, right? Yeah.
These were 4 points. Yeah. Do you have anything to add to that?
To the 4 points.
So, like, what can we do to get better at respecting and setting boundaries?
What can we do to get better at that?
So, I'll recap. First is one, learn about the will of consent.
Oh, yeah.
The other one is if a woman clearly tells you no, yeah, don't ninja around the boundary. Don't try to like do the slow blade. Third one is like practice being comfortable with a no. Say thank you. And share about your fears, desires, and insecurities in the moment. So those are the 4 points that I came up with.
Beautiful. I think it's really important that I start with the 4th because I'm rebellious. That if you voice out your boundaries and desires in the moment, that's beautiful. And I think you can also create a lot of space for yourself and also for your partner by just speaking about that up front. So not even in the moment, you can relate back to it in the moment, but just to already set that up, to have a conversation about like, hey, what are your desires, fears, boundaries for this evening, for example, or even for this dinner or this podcast or like whatever. you're gonna do. So, and then you already set up a frame to in the moment refer to, right? You already create that play field to play at during whatever you're gonna do. And then you had another one. My memory. Can you repeat that?
Fears, desires, insecurities. Practice being comfortable with a no.
Oh, yeah. Being comfortable with a no is I actually have something to add to that. Something that I notice myself as well, that sometimes, specifically with approaching people that I really want to talk to, I still tend to avoid that until I absolutely am sure that they also want to speak with me.
A bit shy.
Yeah. Or then find an excuse or anything. So that's another way of like bouncing around it. So what I found out for myself is to just train my anxiety muscle and get comfortable with like that no, or like that high stress level that a no can cause in my body. So what I found out is that taking ice baths is for me very similar to hearing a no sometimes. It's like the same stress reaction in my body.
So channel that.
Huh?
To channel that.
Channel that?
Yeah, to channel it. Like, and that was funny because I was explaining this yesterday to my girlfriend.
Really?
She can't take an ice bath. As far as impossible. And I was like, yeah, but she said, you can do it. I'm like, do you think I like it? She's like, yeah. I'm like, no, I don't. But like, I find a way to deal with the discomfort.
Yes, that's it.
It's like a meditative state.
Yeah.
But you can, this is exactly what you're describing, I think.
It is. It's like getting used to discomfort and not making it mean anything about yourself or your personality or whatever. It's completely about the other person, not about you.
Yeah, so be comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Yes, yeah. And also try to catch yourself in not making it mean anything that it's not. So when you say no, it doesn't mean that I am not good enough or that I may be boring or whatever. I don't know what's going on in your life.
Yeah, well, that's the difference between facts and fiction.
Yeah.
And we make a lot of fiction.
Yes. Just get out of the fiction stories. Yeah. And ice baths. Yeah.
Ice baths. Okay, well, I guess that's the secret. We take an ice bath. Yeah. Okay. Well, let's wrap it up. Yeah. Because I think your ex-boyfriend, he's waiting outside, and we just touched him on that.
Oh yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you so much, Eric. That was fun.
It was beautiful. Okay, I think we should do more podcasts.
Right?
Yeah.
I think so too.
Okay. Thanks a lot. Okay, so much for this podcast. And if you like this content, go and click the subscribe button, please, so you get notified of upcoming episodes. And speaking of which, my next episode, my guest is Niels Pilar. Niels Pilar is a primal teacher. It's a retreat I once did, hosted by Puja Lab. Niels is a co-teacher there. It's a very, very deep retreat, which goes back to the first 7 years of your childhood, and where you go really into deep patterns, blind spots, conditioning. And with Niels, I'll be talking about shadow work. Also, Niels is a facilitator on the next Warriors Weekender, which is going to be hosted the 3rd, the 4th, and the 5th of February 2023. We'll be doing this again at Vleerhof, an eco-community just across the border in Germany, near Nijmegen. Now, the pre-sale of this retreat is gonna start this week. If you wanna be part of the pre-sale and get an early bird ticket with a big discount, go to mentorofmen.com/warriors, and there you can register for the pre-sale right now. And one last thing, if you like video better than just audio, you can also find the video versions of these podcasts on Spotify and on YouTube. So that's it. So I'll see you again in 2 weeks, and have a good one.